showing 1049. And we are going to move on to Director Gretchen Grigsby on the Government Relations report, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. First, I'd like to give you a little bit of an update on the implementation of legislation that passed during the 87th regular session. You'll remember at the June meeting, I provided a list of the bills that required action by TCOLE. There is an update in your packet on each of those, but the spoiler alert is that all have been implemented with the exception of two that are in their very final stages, which have already been discussed today, one of which is the telecommunicator CPR training, and the other is the implementation of the law enforcement peer network. And now it is time to prepare for next legislative session, as if it ever went away. We had, as you've heard, our Sunset kickoff meeting on Monday. It was attended by the Sunset team, which is 3 of the same 4 individuals that we had during our last review, which is very, very welcome. They've been fantastic to work with, and it provides us that continuity and familiarity that we've had and developed with them. There was also one legislative staffer in attendance who works for one of the Sunset Commission members, and we will be meeting with additional legislative staff over the next coming weeks, and we've already begun setting up additional meetings with the Sunset staff as they begin their process, meeting with agency staff, asking their questions, and providing their updates. You can expect for you to hear from Sunset staff as they seek input from you, from our stakeholders, and other legislative members as well. Command staff has begun preliminary discussions on exceptional items and statutory changes that we would like to request, and we look forward to working with you on these as we move toward 2023 and the upcoming session. And of course, we will work with you, Chief Lamoa, as we get that subcommittee together to work with agency staff on our exceptional items. I think it's going to be an important process, of course, as it always is. We've made some great progress with some of the resources that we were given last session, but of course there's always some ongoing costs that comes with things like that. So we'll continue our discussions there before we have to submit our legislative appropriations request, which usually happens in the July-August timeframe. Moving on to the TCOLE recognitions programs, the Peace Officers Memorial will be held on May 1st, Sunday, May 1st, at the site of the Texas Peace Officers Memorial Monument. Which we're looking forward to that. It will begin at 6:30 p.m. Anybody who's interested is welcome to attend. It's a very, very meaningful event, and so I hope that anybody who's willing and able is able to make it there. The next agenda item that will be before you includes the final approved members, approved law enforcement officials who will be engraved on the memorial. There are a few remaining that hadn't gone through the full process yet, and so those are the final names that will be before you at the next agenda item. In addition, we've got the Law Enforcement Achievement Awards ceremony coming up. That list will be before you for agenda item 5 for your approval. This will be the first ceremony that we've had since 2019. The date is tentatively set for June 10th, but as we've looked at potentially moving the June commission meeting date, we'll adjust that as well. And I want to give special thanks to the judging panel that have worked to review all of these exceptional officers and their works. That includes Sheriff Brian Thomas, Chief Alan Banks, Chief Solomon Cook, Constable Alan Rosen, Chief Jimmy Ellison, Constable Charles Hall, Chief Scott McCollum, and the late Sheriff Glenn Smith. So special thanks to them. I have a couple updates on our communications front. For anybody in this audience who is an Instagram account holder, we now have an Instagram account, and that can be found. We're going to work on putting that information out, but we've put announcements out on our Facebook and our Twitter accounts. There are links to it on the briefing. At TCOLE was not available, so we've had to get a little bit creative with the account name. You can find it at Texas_com_law_enforcement. And I'm happy to announce that it hit 100 followers yesterday. We just launched it about a month ago, so that's pretty exciting. Sarah Flott, who Kim had sung the praises of, has done a really great job. She's taken that by the horns and has done a fantastic job better managing our social media accounts so that we can get creative on how to capture our audiences. One of the other communications items that we have is our quarterly newsletter called The Briefing. We've separated that from the commission meeting date, so it's going to continue to be quarterly for now, and we'll look at that as we go along. We intend it to continue to provide relevant information and updates as it always has. We know that not all of our licensees are reached through other mediums, and so this allows us to conduct outreach and share updates in diverse ways. There's been a lot going on at TCOLE, so if you haven't taken a look at the latest edition, I would certainly encourage you to do so because there's a lot to learn. Unless you have any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you so much for your great work. I don't think, regardless of the legislative sessions and the dates that we're in session, I don't think you slow down at all in between. So we appreciate all the great work. And I want to challenge folks in the audience and online. I know occasionally I hear where, I didn't hear about that information. The briefing is a great instrument. It's got all kinds of information in it. Information I think that everyone in this room would find useful, whether you were a licensee, whether you're a training provider, whoever you might be. My challenge to you is to please use that. That information is for you. It's a vehicle to get information out. If you have any other thoughts or ideas on how we can better communicate with you, we are open to that. And Mike, I'm going to digress a little bit and ask you to go back and just talk for a moment about the new capacity to send out large volumes of email versus the capacity we had in the past, because that's huge for us here in Texas.
So we have a system now called Gov Delivery, which allows us to make custom graphs and charts and surveys and build those and deliver them to, we can actually deliver them to all licensees. There's really not a limit to how many receivers we can have. The largest one we have sent out so far was we sent one out to all agencies, and we've sent one out to 10,000 individuals for survey purposes that met a criteria we were looking for. The nice thing of this system is it gives us an analytics, so we can see engagement, we can see click-throughs and how many people are actually engaging in the product that we're sending out. It's going to change vastly from what you were talking about before. We could send it out to 100 or 200 at a time, and we had to batch it out, and if somebody else was sending something out, we'd probably get that kickback, and someone in our great IT team would have to sit there and send, and then stop for a minute as all the kickbacks start coming through. So this is a one and done. Multiple teams have access to this now, and they have the freedom to build their own structure. Government relations using it. Education services is taking good advantage of it, and we are able to reach out a whole lot better. We're already looking at some of the features that it's going to give us in non-compliance and case notifications because of that analytics and that feedback that we're able to get back from the product.
So we have made a commitment to elevate our communication to our constituents, to increase the communication that you received. This was a vital component of being able to do that. So I can guarantee you that in the months and years to come that you will see significantly increased information and communications coming out from TCOLE. We heard you. It took a little bit because it takes money, it takes funding to make it happen. So we're very thankful to the legislature for providing that funding and you guys got it up and running so quickly, so thank you very, very much. But thank you for all the great work that you're doing on the bulletin and all the other great work that you're doing. Do we have any motions for agenda item number 3?
Accept the reports as received.
I believe
Oh,
you have
I'm
one
sorry.
more.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
He's so quiet. He did.
I am so sorry. We have one more. You mentioned agenda item number 4, and I skipped down to agenda item number 4. So we have one more director's report. Last but not least, we have Mr. Brian Roth, who is going to give the finance director's report.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. You have in your packet the normal financial report, including expenditures and revenue. I wanted to give you a quick update of what some of the things we've been doing in our division. HR side, you heard Executive Director Vickers give a really good rundown. We've been busy behind the scenes hiring and onboarding those folks. The financial operations side, we've got our curriculum grant, which has been winding down nicely. We're 99% complete with that curriculum update grant. We've got a school marshal grant also. We're 44% complete with that. We have processed our employee W-2s as it's the end of the tax year, as well as vendor 1099s. We've help train some of these new staff in some of the systems that they'll need part of their job. We produced a veteran workforce summary report, annual historically underutilized business reports, Texas Workforce Commission labor report, and done quite a bit of grant reporting in that time frame since the last commission meeting. And we're currently working on, of course, what you've heard some of the other directors talk about, the sunset process. We're working on that, as well as the purchase of the TCOLE system, the financial aspects of the TCOLE online payment processing application. We're also working on something called a risk management program review from the State Office of Risk Management. That is another state agency that helps us mitigate some of our risks. As well, we're undergoing, with Sunset, we're undergoing a strategic fiscal review from the Legislative Budget Board as well, like we did last session. We've been working on that, as well as you've heard the TSS Secure Share application purchase, the TCOLE conference, and working on the agency's strategic plan. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Brian, when we're looking at this is another acronym. I understand it, but probably not everybody. So can you go over BRP?
BRP, benefit replacement pay?
It's on the expenditure report when we talk, I'm assuming you mean it's above the salaries. It says includes BRP.
That is an artifact. Technically, we do not have any employees who are able to receive benefit replacement pay, which is BRP. That was a holdover from people, I believe, who were employed in 1986, a certain date, 1986, and they continued their employment. So we've kind of gotten out of that range where we have any employees that are getting that.
Okay. On the bottom of the report, on the head count, I'm assuming that's our full-time employee, our FTE count. What's our authorized strength again?
67.6.
Do you anticipate you being taking any budget that's not being used and moving it forward this year, or you guys? Because we obviously have salaries that are going to lapse, so I'm assuming we're going to UB some forward to help take care of some projects or do some other things.
We'll be able to UB. We have some authority in some places, but not necessarily in salary. So we'll see it in other ways we can possibly take some of that gap money and spend that down, but we don't have authority general UB. We do in capital, we do with some other projects and the flag fund, but not just an overall UB authority.
You anticipate, I'm looking at the percentages, so you don't see any issues. If we're forecasting, we're going to be good
We will be,
for this fiscal year.
we will be in the black.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Quick comment about the reports in our packet. I think this is, at least for me, this is what we were asking for, and so I was really glad to see all the information in the packets. So thank you to all of you. Brian, yours is, I mean, we weren't overlooking you. It's just always great and spot on, and so we just assume it's well put together. But everyone else had to kind of, fill in based on what the commissioners were asking for. So this is our first packet kind of since then, and I wanted to let you guys know that I appreciate it. It looks good. Keep it up.
I have such a good staff.
Now that it is over, I will make a motion to accept the reports as presented.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. And the motion passes. So now, Director Grigsby, we are going to agenda item number 4.
Before you are the list of the final names to be approved for this year's Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony. As I mentioned, these are the ones that had been working their way through the process and are now ready for your approval before the May 1st ceremony. First is Police Officer Jose Mesa of the Burnett Police Department. End of watch is December 20th, 2019. Detention Deputy Timothy De La Fuente from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. End of watch April 3rd, 2020. Corrections Officer Elizabeth Jones, Texas Department of Criminal Justice, August 15, 2020. Police Officer Patrick Eugene Sloan of the Sunray Police Department, end of watch October 31st, 2020. Senior Police Officer Ernest Leal Jr., Houston Police Department, end of watch November 27th, 2020. Security Control Specialist Jerry Jones of the Fort Worth Police Department, end of watch December 23rd, 2020. Corrections Officer James N. Henry, Hayes County Sheriff's Office, end of watch August 27th, 2021. Fire Marshal Roland Acevedo, Denton County Fire Marshal's Office, end of watch September 13th, 2021. Police Officer Mitchell Rector, Oakwood Police Department, October 18th, 2021. And Police Officer Richard Houston II, Mesquite Police Department, end of watch December 3rd, 2021. There's also a list of historical research names that I won't go through unless you would like me to. They're thoroughly vetted and reviewed by the committee, the Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony Committee, as well as some independent researchers, and all of these are here for you for your approval.
I'll make a motion that we take action to accept and enroll and induct the officers in the Texas Peace Officers Memorial Monument as listed in our packet.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And the motion passes. Thank you so much. And you also have agenda item number 5, which is discuss and take action to approve the recommendations for the Law Enforcement Achievement Awards.
Thank you again, Commissioners. Before you is a list of nominees for the Law Enforcement Achievement Awards in the categories of Valor, Public Service, and Professional Achievement. They have been reviewed by the judging panel that I mentioned earlier, and again, thanks to them. And so those are for your review and approval.
Motion that we approve the recommendations for the Law Enforcement Achievement Awards.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you. To you and to the judging panel that you recognized earlier, that's a lot of work to go through all of the packets. I'm going to try to add on to your workload next year. Folks in the audience and online, we have a lot of folks that are doing incredible work. And this is yet another opportunity for us to recognize their great work. But the only way we can do that is with applications from you. So I would encourage all of you to get in tune with the kind of with the rhythm and with the schedule. Director Grigsby can enlighten you or educate you on the schedule. It's pretty consistent each year. So we have, I think the thing that I notice is, there's certain agencies and it's definitely on their radar, it's definitely on their schedule, and they routinely submit their personnel for these awards. And oftentimes, it's kind of the same handful of agencies year after year, and I'm not taking anything away from the great work that they're doing, but we have people from across the state that are doing incredible jobs each and every day, and it is our duty and responsibility to recognize them. So I would challenge everyone to please take the time. It is time-consuming to put together a packet. It's gonna cost you a little bit of time and a little bit of work. But the folks that are out there serving deserve that from us.
If I may add, one of the exciting things that I think we'll see with this crop of nominees, now that they'll be made public with your approval, is that there is a broader diversity of agencies that have nominated their officers for these awards, and I'm personally very excited about that. For anybody who's listening and is wondering what that time schedule is, we collect those. By rule, it is December 31st of each year. We do build in an allowance there, knowing that that is the end of the holiday, and so we'll accept those generally through mid-January, and we'll continue to do that. So they are intended for events that have happened within a calendar year, especially for the ones that are for a specific incident. But we've had some people recognized for events that have happened in previous years or a body of work over their career. So we would, again, encourage anybody who's interested in what that process looks like, reach out to me or my staff. We're happy to help, and we are excited for the ceremony this year.
I also would like to throw a plug in for the ceremony itself. It's one of my favorite times of the year. And if anyone that is in the audience here or online has not ever attended one of those, I want to encourage them. It's always on the Friday after the commission meeting on that Thursday in June, generally at the Capitol. We're looking at that because it's maybe a little bit larger group, but generally at the Capitol Auditorium. But to be able to honor these officers and hear some of the absolute amazing things that take place, I'm proud to be part of that, and I want to encourage people, if you come to the meeting or if you can make it, come to the ceremony and hear these stories. It's pretty amazing.
And as I mentioned previously, we have agenda item 6, which is, or was going to be a presentation of the Texas Law Enforcement Peer Network by Caruth Police Institute. We are going to defer that to the June meeting, and they will be presenting or doing their presentation to us in June. So we are looking forward to that. And we now have agenda item 7, which is discuss and take action on the request for TCOLE waiver of Rule 217.1, minimum standards for enrollment and initial licensure.
I'll introduce this if it's okay. We did receive a request for Class A waiver from Sheriff Chris Forbes at Randall County. We reviewed this and found that it would be very applicable to bring this to you for your attention, so we have forwarded it to you for your consideration.
And Sheriff, if you could both come up and introduce yourselves, and the commission would like to hear from both of you, please.
That got caught and getting caught. He had some steroids with him. Took responsibility for what he did. Pled guilty. Received probation. Fulfilled that probation. Even his probation officer commented on what a fine job that he had done. He and that was kind of an anomaly in his life. Ever since that time, he's been a model citizen. Mr. Lewis he worked for Missouri Valley for 10 years. After that, he worked for the Amarillo Independent School District, and for 4 years, he taught the youth of Amarillo auto mechanics. He wasn't looking for a job whenever we went to find him. We actually sought him out. We were looking for a new mechanic, and we kept going to different service writers and other people in the community looking for a top person, and his name kept coming up, Will Lewis. Even the people that we got as subject matter experts to help us do the interviews highly recommended Mr. Lewis. He is a fine member of our community. He's been married to his wife, Dawn, for 14 years. He has a son and a daughter. He's very active in his church, volunteers for a lot of work at his church. It just kind of shows you what kind of a man Mr. Lewis has become. He's the kind of guy that if you call him at 3 o'clock in the morning, he's not going to ask why you need help. He's just going to get dressed and he's going to come and help you, because he's got a servant's heart. I'm asking for a waiver for the Class A misdemeanor that he committed in 2003. He has shown that he is a productive member of society, and this is something that will help my office and also the community at large. If he's able to get this waiver and become a licensed jailer, he will be able to supervise inmates and trustees. We can then place some trustees with him to help mentor those young men and to show them that there is a path other than the path that they're on, and assist him in the duties that he has. And so I respectfully ask for this waiver today, and if you'd like to speak to Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. I'm Will Lewis. Thank you for your time and consideration. I stand before you, greatly remorseful of those decisions. My mom's words back in the day ring true, that bad decisions could possibly follow you the rest of your life. And I stand before you speaking almost 19 years later, that having to face them again. And I'm grateful to you for your time to hear me out. I made a bad mistake in that time of my life, and having a number of years to look back, I know I made a number of mistakes in the people that I was around, the people that I let influence my life, the priorities I had in my life, and I made a vow, I made a bunch of changes and set goals for myself after that time, because I knew that's not who I was. And I changed the people who I was around. I dedicated myself to God and His commands. I strove to be excellent in my career, and now having looked back, been married 14 years with 2 kids of my own, those goals still ring true and are ever more in the forefront of my mind for my kids, to teach them of the consequences of your actions and your decisions that you have. And I know solely that I made those mistakes, and I also took responsibility to change those mistakes and to better myself and to be good. And so I know that in being granted this waiver, I know I could be a positive role model. I could be a positive mentor to others. I could help let them know the actions. I could relate to them in showing them the right decisions that need to be made and the goals they need to set for their lives. And I could help them in that life, all while teaching them life skills in this life. So I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Commissioners, questions?
Actually, I don't have any questions for you. For the audience, you know, we receive a very thorough packet that we review related to each of these waivers that come before us. And we're talking about the incident reports, letters of recommendation, personal history statements, a whole slew of documents, if sometimes 40, 50, 60 plus pages of information on the individuals that come before us. So sometimes we don't ask a lot of questions because everything we have, you know, with all the materials, our questions are answered. Like I stated, I don't have any questions for you. It concerns me that you didn't have an attorney, that you waived that right, and you know, I don't want to make you feel bad about your decision, but for everyone else you talk to, you know, make sure you have a lawyer, because I looked at it and I thought, man, I mean, I would have filed a motion to suppress and you probably wouldn't have been there, and it's just, anyhow. But it's unfortunate because, you know, you're here today because of these choices and things that happened so long ago. But I appreciate you, again, coming back and having to face this straight on with a room full of strangers, you know, listening to the details of your life and us having read it all. And I'm happy that you're choosing. I think it's a very challenging move that you're making to become a jailer. I think is really challenging work, and I don't think most people can appreciate just what a hard job that is to do day in, day out, to be there. You get to leave at the end of the day, but it's a very different place to spend your days and nights in. And beyond that, the choice to mentor those individuals that need it so much, you know, so many of the people that wind up imprisoned come from really challenging backgrounds and have had, I mean, sometimes just the worst luck in life, and sometimes just who they were born to and the circumstances they were born into. And so I commend you for that, and if the waiver is granted, then thank you for your work.
Sheriff Forbes, I appreciate your time coming down to the commission. So that speaks volume of what you think about the individual before us today, that you
Absolutely.
take the time to come here, and I appreciate that. Mr. Lewis, you understand that if the waiver is granted, that you can't take that waiver to another agency?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's clear, because you can't take the good graces of the sheriff and say, hey, thanks, they're going to pay me more money, I'm out of here.
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. All right. I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Let me echo also, I think on behalf of all of the commissioners, thank you very much to both of you for taking the time to be here. As Commissioner Hester said, I think it speaks volumes. And certainly tells us a story. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant the waiver to William Lewis.
Seconded.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you very much.
And to those that you serve.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We are going to move to agenda item number 8, which is discuss and take action on proposed orders of amendments to the existing TCOLE rules. Our general counsel will be briefing us on that. For my fellow commissioners, we will be taking a vote on each rule separately so that they stand alone. And Mr. Beecham.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, everyone in attendance, for your consideration this morning, we have 9 final amendments to the current rules to give everybody some procedural background and some historical background basically on the rules process for all of our benefits. As a refresher, these rules, as any rules are first brought to the Commissioners for a first reading. These particular rules were brought before them in September. For the first time, the Commissioners looked at them, made changes as they saw necessary. The rules are then sent to the Texas Register for publication and receipt of public comment. They've been open for public comment either through staff or the Texas Register since in the fall. That public comment, if received, is taken for consideration before final adoption, which is where we are in the process today. If the Commissioners so adopt every one of these amendments to the rules, these rules, once published in the Register, will become effective on their effective date, and they will be the new rules as with the effect of law. With that background in mind, I'll go through each one of these amendments and give us all some refresher on exactly what we're voting on this morning. The first amendment proposed is to Rule 211-27, the reporting responsibilities of individuals. The amendment to this rule will clarify the distinction between a dishonorable discharge from the armed forces and a dishonorable discharge from a law enforcement agency as indicated on an F5 report. We felt this was necessary in order to distinguish the two because it is also applicable and corresponding change to the revocation rule where agencies and/or licensees will be under the understanding that they won't have their license taken by TCOLE for a single dishonorable discharge from a law enforcement agency under an F5 report, only under a dishonorable discharge from the armed forces. Final amendment to Rule number 1 for your consideration.
Any questions or discussion? Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. That rule passes.
Final amendment number 2 is to Rule 211.30, Chief Administrator Responsibilities for Class A and Class B waivers. As we just had a Class A waiver in front of us for approval by the Commissioners, and going to Commissioner Hester's point that there was great discussion about last time, in the future, if a licensee who has received a Class A waiver and has been approved for that waiver, in the future, they can bring that to the Executive Director for approval to transfer that waiver without bringing it to the Commissioners. The proposed amendment to Final Amendment number 2 is to make Class A waivers non-transferable without approval by the agency for your consideration.
Discussion or questions?
Just for clarification, Counselor, do we have any public comment on
There's been no public comment received.
Perfect. A motion to adopt the final amendment number 2 for chief officer's responsibilities for Class A and B waivers.
Have a motion, do we have a second? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes.
Commissioners, final amendment number 3 is to Rule 217.1, minimum standards for enrollment and initial licensure. This, as we discussed in Rule, a proposed final amendment number 1, it distinguishes the language again for dishonorable discharge from a law enforcement agency from the Armed Forces of the United States, and also reflects statutory changes pursuant to Senate Bill 24 from the 87th regular session related to submissions to the Commission for background information and in-personal review of personnel records being acceptable in lieu of making personnel records available electronically. For your consideration, final amendment number 3.
Questions or discussion?
I make a motion to approve final amendment number 3 to 17.1, minimum standards for enrollment and licensure.
Have a motion, do we have a second? I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Rule passes.
Commissioners, proposed amendment number 4 is to Rule 218.3, legislatively required continuing education for licensees in response to HB 786 from the 87th session regarding to telecommunicator training for cardiopulmonary resuscitation training. For your consideration.
Do we have any questions or comments? Motion?
I make a motion to approve final amendment number 4, 218.3, legislatively required continuing education for licensees.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Rule passes.
Commissioners, proposed amendment number 5 finalizes Rule 219.1, eligibility to take state examinations. The change to this rule regards a person who is changing the wording from licensed to appointed within 2 years, and if they are not appointed within the 2 years, the license will be placed in an inactive status. For your consideration, final amendment number 5.
Any questions or comments?
I have one. If they're put in active, whose decision is it to go back through a basic or not?
A very good question, and I'm glad to get the opportunity to explain this a little further, just to bring it back to your attention. This is a pretty sweeping change. One of the biggest complaints we get, and the biggest things we face, are people that go through an academy, pass the test, and they currently have 2 years to become appointed. Then they have to go back through another academy if they don't make that 2 years. And we always wondered why Texas didn't issue a license to a person who passes the state test until they get their first appointment. And I believe we figured out the reason that is, the best we can figure, is back when this was first enacted, there was no vetting of a person to go into an academy. And so the first vetting they got to be eligible to be a peace officer or a licensee was when they got to the hiring process. And so we didn't want to issue a license just to find out that they were not eligible and have to jerk it back away. All of that has changed because now you have to go through a vetting process before you're even allowed in an academy. So what we would do with this change is we will start issuing the license to a person as soon as they pass the state exam, just like nearly every other profession out there. They won't have to wait until they get their first appointment for us to issue the license. But then that brings up the question of what happens if they don't get appointed for a period of time. Well, with the advances that we have in supplemental and interim training, the hands-on stuff that they may lose some of that may get stale in that 2-year period. We will just put if they don't get appointed within 2 years, we'll put that license in an inactive status, and that reactivation, if you're coming from that position, will have some of that specialized training that you have to catch back up into and get away from the staleness before you can go ahead and then be appointed. So it becomes just another form of inactive rather than making them start all over at a whole academy again after those 2 years. But the biggest change that it makes is us issuing that license as soon as they pass the state exam, which is what happens in almost every other profession. And we think this is going to clear up a lot of issues that we have in people that are really unhappy with the way the process works, and I think it'll make it better all the way around.
Director Vickers' scenario, just to play this out. So if I go to the basic academy, you issue the license, and I agree with what you're trying to do. I mean, it's an occupational license at the end of the day. If I don't get appointed within the first 2 years, but I keep my continuing education up, and 6 years later down the road, as long as I've kept everything up, would I have to repeat in an academy to be reactivated if I keep the training hours current? Because it's kind of the same way for people now, right? If people get out, they've worked 10 or 12 years, they're like, hey, I'm going to go to the oil field and go make a lot of money, but I want to keep my license active. They continue their continuing education so they don't fall on a non-compliant status. I'm just making sure that that's kind of how the intent of what that is to play out.
You're portraying it exactly the way it would work. Okay. That if, once they get the license, it's like any other licensee, and as long as you, even if you're not appointed, if you keep your training up, which keeps you up to date in things that you need to know about the profession, then your license remains active and you're eligible to be appointed. I'm second guessing myself, though. If they don't get appointed within the 2 years, let me get back with you on the answer exactly how that's going to look, because
then the
one thing we're
FTO
worried about.
The FTO part is
going to pick up a lot of that.
Yeah.
But one thing we were worried about, and I'm beginning to second guess myself a little bit, is the hands-on skills that you learn in the academy. That isn't usually part of a training regimen that a person has if they're just maintaining their license. How much of that do they lose in 2 years? So that reactivation, if it does go inactive, will include some of that. That's what we have determined they need to do, is get caught up on that.
And we've got this, and I should have brought this up earlier, proposed amendment number 6 has some of this laid out as well, if that may answer some of the questions we're having.
Thank you.
it does.
I kept thinking, it doesn't say here what I thought we talked about, but yeah, the reactivation part will catch up with that.
I do not have any other questions, Madam Chair.
We should take these two together, Rule 5 and 6. Should we try it that way? Kim, if you had anything further to add, if you get a chance to catch up on 6 real quick.
If you'd like to go ahead and discuss 6, but we'll continue to, we will vote on each one of them separately.
Sure. And Commissioners, proposed amendment number 6 was made in response to the proposed amendment to number 5. As you see under subsection D, we've reconfigured the categories for if a licensee is not appointed within 2 years, but less than 5 from initial licensures, and you'll see the requirements A through D under there. And you'll also see the next category down, the change, if not appointed within 5 years of initial licensures, obviously meeting current enrollment standards, current licensing standards, completing the basic licensing course, making applications, and passing the licensing exam.
Let me clarify that this is what I had in the back of my mind, and your question, I went off in another direction. If you're not appointed within that first 2 years, we are concerned about staleness of the training that you got in the academy, which is what the 2 years was set for to begin with. So if you're not appointed within that 2 years, yes, there's a very specific type of reactivation that you have to, it will go inactive, and just simply going out and doing 40 hours of training is not going to keep
Yeah, the
that from
hands-on
happening.
skills base is
Yes.
different than sitting through the classroom
Exactly,
stuff. So
exactly. Yes, sir. This was set up to take care of the staleness that comes from the 2 years of not doing the job at all, if you've never done the job. So, yes, sir, it is set up that way.
Any other questions or comments about proposed amendment 5 or 6?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve amendment number 5, section 219.1, eligibility to take state examinations.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Rule passes. Have a motion for amendment number 6.
I make a motion to accept final amendment number 6, 219.11, reactivation of a license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. The rule passes.
Commissioners, final amendment number 7 is a repeal of current Rule 221.31. This is necessary to reflect statutory changes pursuant to SB 198. For your consideration, final amendment number 7.
Questions or comments?
Make a motion to adopt final amendment number 7, deleting 221.31, retired peace officer and federal law enforcement officer firearms proficiency.
Have a motion? We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Amendment passes.
Commissioners, final amendment number 8 for your consideration is the license revocation provision. As we discussed in final amendment number 1, this makes the distinction between a person who's received a dishonorable discharge from the Armed Forces of the United States and clarifies that the TCOLE will not take action against a licensee who has received a single dishonorable discharge from a law enforcement agency and on an F5 form of separation. For your consideration, final amendment number 8.
Any comments or questions? A motion?
I make a motion to approve final amendment number 8 to 23.19, license revocation.
Second.
Yeah, for clarification, 227.7. So, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Amendment passes.
Commissioners, final amendment number 9 is for Rule 227.7, school marshals renewals. This reflects the statutory changes pursuant to SB 785, passed in the 87th regular session. It makes school marshal's license expire on August 31st, following the second anniversary of the date the commission licenses the person, instead of on the person's birth date following the initial license or renewal, as the previous version of the statute and rule read. For your consideration, proposed amendment number 9.
Before we have discussion, let me do a clarification here. We just voted on 223.19. So any confusion or questions, anything we need to go back and revisit? No. Okay, so we are on 227.7. So questions or comments?
I make a motion that we accept final amendment number 9, 227.7, school marshal renewal.
We have a motion and 2 seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Amendment passes. Good to continue on, or do we need a break? Keep going. Okay. We still have a lot of information to cover, so let's please, it is 11:44. If we could keep it to a 7-minute break, so we will be back at 11:51.